Hello. Today my guest is Jim Bryson. He is an author, editor, publisher, a former engineer, father, husband, and friend, and I'm happy to talk to him today. How's it
Hey,
going, Jim?
good. Doing well. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. So we worked together for a short time in Kentucky a few years ago and got to know each other a little bit, but I'd love to hear more about your background and how you grew up and some of your time that led you to become a writer.
Okay. Um, I'll start from the beginning. I was born at a very early age, the child of a a Marine from Schenectady, New York, and a most popular girl in a small town, East Berlin, Pennsylvania. And to say the two of them could not have been more ill-suited would be an understatement. It was quite a violent upbringing. Mom succumbed to drugs and alcohol, and dad succumbed to violence. So I learned at a very early age to be on my own. I walked the streets of Schenectady for hours, miles and miles, things that today would get parents arrested. Me, my brother, my sister, we grew up with a sense of independence and finding refuge beyond the confines of the home. So it's like we emerged from the home, but we found the world. you know. So I've always been comfortable traveling, being in new places, and as a writer, um, writing is a solitary experience. I've found, and you have to choose your own way. You have to be comfortable with that way, and you have to be comfortable being on your own for a long, long time because the, before you have anything worth reading, worth generating any sense of acclaim, you're going to be at it for weeks, months, years. My favorite author is Pat Conroy. He wrote The Prince of Tides. He wrote um, uh, yeah, those guys, the Lords of Discipline, a lot of his stuff. Almost every book he ever wrote was made into a movie. But he worked for years on a single book, and he talked about the things he didn't do in life, which was just writing. So anyway, I grew up. Pretty much a child of the streets, a child of aloneness. I was ended up being raised in five different homes as people would drop kick me, punt me to the other horizon. It's like, not only no, but hell no, no, this kid is screwed up, And I used to look at him. If I had the wherewithal I had now, I'd look at him and say, yeah, well, who screwed me up, you dumb bastards? But anyway, um, again, a sense of independence. Uh, Being very comfortable with acute loneliness. Okay. People look at me and they see the frivolity. They see happy Jim. He can make a conversation anyway. He loves to tell stories. He loves people. And all those things are true. But it's let's see, what was it Bob Dylan said? You never turn around to see the tears on the clown when they had done tricks for you. There's a silent side to me. There's a very lonely side to me. The difference between being alone and lonely is that when you're alone, you want to be. When you're lonely is when you're alone and you don't want to be. And I experience both. And I think all humans do. The question is twofold. One is, how comfortable are we with it? And number two, what can we do with it? Okay. If you tie it back to writing, if you love the limelight, if you love the stage, if you want to be, the life of the party and those things, you're a great socialite, but you may not be a writer. A writer is looking at what everyone else looks at, but seeing what no one else sees. Okay. And of course, all of our seeing is a reflection of our being, of who we are, what makes us the way we are. And a writer has to be not only unique, but okay with being unique. Okay. Um, you have to accept who you are. For the longest time, I feel like I've learned a lot in life. Okay. And for the longest time, I've wanted to broadcast it to the world. I mean, the most profound truths can be uttered so simply, Well, that's fine, but they can't be appreciated simply by someone else telling you. You have to live it. You have to grow into it. Okay. But for the longest time, I wanted to stand on a stage and just broadcast, hey, listen, this is all you got to do. Just, stop your bullshit. And here's a very simple few homilies and, be warmed and filled, go and sin no more. But I realize that's not how it works. That's how it works at all.
That
Part,
reminds me. That reminds me of a part of your recent book, "Who Shot Your Tail Off," which is a a writer's guide to passion, purpose, production, and staying alive.
yes.
That reminds me of a character in that book named Wilbur.
Oh, you read Wilbur.
I went back and reread it, and that pretty much talks about how his story of how he learned as a pastor. He learned that really it's all about love, and he wanted to proclaim that to the world.
Hmm.
But it took him the journey. He had to have the journey and to convey that journey to the people for them to truly appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I have learned, and anyone in my station in life, but will have learned how to raise kids about a year after they leave home. It'll dawn on you. Oh, well, damn, Um, and I could sit down and I could write a book, How to Raise Kids. All right. That's going to do very little good to any reader. What will have a powerful impact is if I write the story of my journey of raising kids. Okay. The successes, the failures, the triumphs, and the just utter dismal devolving into disintegration. Because people know they're messed up, all right, in a certain area, right? They just do. I mean, we live with it all the time, and then, well, damn, I'm an okay husband. I could be a better husband. I'm a not so good a father. I could be a better. We know that. We know that the diagnosis is not what's lacking. It's often the hope, the encouragement that comes from knowing there is something better. It's like knowing I'm hungry is one thing. Knowing that there's a McDonald's just down the road, that's something different. So when you begin to share your journey with someone, like here's my journey of say raising kids for 30 years, actually longer than that, but the sharing my journey will open up the reader. It will stimulate, how can I say, it'll resonate with the reader, and they'll go, yeah, I have that trouble too. And they want to go to the next chapter and see what this dumb son of a bitch did about it. And hey, the trouble with hope, Vince, is that to receive hope, it requires that we open ourselves up. But we open ourselves up at the risk of pain, of exacerbating the pain. Okay. So if I said, I can teach you to, I don't know, be a better husband or something. Well, you're going to have to be willing to face your inadequacies, which again, we all have inadequacies. We're all aware of the inadequacies, but we all keep them covered up because we have to live sane lives. The people that can't do that, those are the ones that sit up at night sharpening knives and watching horror flicks. Okay. Those are the crazy people. But the average person, is the needs are going to lay dormant until hope is received, welcomed, and then they're going to look around. You're going to look around and maybe put a hand up, and it's that hand up that is so hard to do. Which is why, as a writer, whatever you're writing about, fiction or nonfiction, you have to sell it. And I know selling sounds like a crass word. It's not. Okay, every one of us buys things, right? We value quality and we value economy. Hey, look, I got the best car ever for the cheapest price. Yeah, okay. Selling. Well, writers sell their ideas. Now, it could be, again, straight fiction. I'm not talking necessarily nonfiction, but a writer has to come across as credible. Because what you're asking the reader to do is suspend their sense of disbelief long enough to entertain your story, whether it's about Penelope Tulips and her frolicking up and down a hill in Victorian England in the 1800s, and how she falls in love with the parson and all that. Whatever. It could be just a simple story, but at the root of that story is, hey, love springs eternal in the human heart, or there's always a value. But you have to be credible. The writer's craft is one of integrity. All right, I have to sell my story with integrity. You can't pull any punches.
When did you decide that you wanted to be a writer? When did that happen?
Uh, well, there's two sides to that coin. Deciding to be a writer is to accept what you are, and then develop it. Okay, figure out what you want to do with it. So I'd really say I didn't decide to be a writer. I realized I was a writer. And funny things happen. When I was a little kid, I would scribble little poems and things in the margins. I was enthralled with reading. Now, I'm dating myself. I'm about 120 right now. I'll be 121 in September. But, there was the Hardy Boys Mysteries. There was another series, and it was called The Three Boys, I think it was. It was somebody, and Abercrombie. And they would go on adventures, and I'm a little kid. And I'd curl up at night under the covers with a flashlight, and I would read for hours. I was just enthralled with reading. Um, so then when we began to communicate, you have to write a letter to somebody, say, hey, the mailbox will be installed in such time. I found myself, writing these long lines of prose about the mailbox, and maybe it was dripping with lilacs, and it was the port of the rendezvous, and then the mailman was secretly putting a cocaine stash in the back. I don't know. I would storyize everything. Yeah, that's a word, storyize. Look it up. It'll be in the dictionary soon. Yeah, storyize. Yes, yes. The eyes of Laura Mars. Anyway, so everything I did, I put a spin to it. And I remember early in my career when email began to show up. Of course, it was in stone tablets, and it took you an hour to chisel all the letters out. And then the pterodactyl had to fly it to the next place and drop it and hopefully not hit the guy in the head. But still, so email's coming out. And I would not just say the meeting is at 2:00. I would say, come and bring me your best. And if you're bleeding, put a tourniquet on it. And I don't want to hear any excuses. We shall excel. We shall grow. We shall sacrifice a virgin to the gods. We will kill, whatever I could do. And what I found is that it got people's attention. All right. Because you think about the average professional, you get hundreds of emails a day. And which one's going to rise to the top? Well, the story. The story will rise to the top. And people, I've had people come to me and say, like, if I was leaving a project or something, and they say, "Hey, Jim, yeah, please keep in touch." I said, "Okay, well," I said, "Would you copy me on your emails?" He said, "We just love reading your stuff." It's like, how do you know you're a good writer? Well, if people want to read your stuff, and I'll go off on a quick aside. What I say in the book is, never trust the feedback of those who love you. Okay. If you write something and your wife, your children, your friends, your coworkers, yeah, Jim, this is the greatest thing since, the King James Bible or something. Okay. They're lying. Okay. Lying and love, the two L words, they're kind of cousins. All right. Honey, does this dress make me look fat? Oh, hell no, not at all. Not you, baby. Okay. How is this thing that I wrote? Oh, it is. Oh, I was enthralled. I wept. I just stood up. I'm a new man. Thank you, Jim. And then they toss it aside and they never read it again. So how do you know that your writing is worth anything? Well, what is the reaction of the people? The true actions speak louder than bullshit. Okay, so the true reaction. Do they pass it on? Do they recommend it? Do they say, "Hey, there's this nutcase over here with tape on his glasses, and he has written this, and you ought to read it." So I began to do that, and it wasn't long. The let's see, the pinnacle moment for me was I met a guy named Harold Eberly, and Harold is a sort of, you could say, a traveling minister, and he at the time was doing a lot of work in Africa. And he asked me to come along. And I said, well, okay, sure. What are you doing in Africa? Well, we're doing some preaching. We're helping villagers, get established, buildings and medical care and things like that. And we're strengthening the local church. Now, when you say the local church in Africa, this isn't just come on Sunday and sing a few choruses of "Just as I Am" and leave. No, the church is a community center. So they're feeding people, they're getting people inoculations. It's a community. I said a community center, but it's more than what we think of in America as church. Okay, and usually the African churches they don't lock the doors. It's a good thing. So anyway, I went with them. and, and we're in the village of, I think it's pronounced Naharuhu. We're in Kenya, but we're up in the mountains. And genius boy me, I'm thinking, I'm going to Africa. Where's Kenya? It's on the equator. I don't need a jacket, t-shirts, and shorts and dunkery. No, Kenya is up, up, up. you know, and it's colder than a former wife's hello. So we're sitting there one night, and there's a fire. We're in the hostel where we're staying, and there's this. They keep this fire going. The Africans are very good hosts. So the people that run the hostel, they come in about every half hour, and they're burning mahogany of all things, right? Yeah, there's a firewood for you, but they have so much of it over there. And so Harold is got this big sheath of paper, and he's scribbling away on this paper. I say, hey Harold, what are you doing? Because I'm just getting to know the guy. And oh yeah, it's a manuscript for my next book. Oh, cool. What are you writing about? And he tells me what he's writing about. And I said, can I take a look at it? He goes, yeah, sure. Here. And he throws it at me, and I'm starting to read. And my instincts are like, oh, this is horrible. This is so bad. It's making me regret the invention of language. And I say, Harold, would you like a little help? And he goes, yeah, sure. I really would. Yeah. I said, so for the next 4 weeks, I spent all my spare time with that manuscript, and I marked the crap out of it. Okay, and we finally flew back. There was a few of us on the team, and we all flew back to London, and then from London we took our individual flights to back to the States wherever we lived. And so we get back to London, and we're sitting there at a table having a coffee, and I pull out the manuscript out of my backpack and I throw it at Harold, which the manuscript now weighs about 4 extra pounds from all the red ink, you know. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's the end of that budding relationship. Is I murdered the thing. And 'cause Harold had a very childish way of expressing himself, and he's a profound theologian, but at that time his communication style, I would say, was somewhere around the fourth grade. He's a lot better now. He's got letters after his name and all that. But anyway, so I throw that at him, and I was like, well, that was great. And I get an email about 2 weeks later, and he is just pouring out the praise and pouring out the thanks, and he doesn't want to ever issue a book without my help, and he hasn't. We've colluded on 25 books. Anyway, it grew from there, and I realized not only could I write for my own self or to entertain my coworkers, but I could begin to help other people find their voice, and that means so much to me. I burn with this reality that there is goodness in every single human being. And what is not readily apparent is simply the challenge to reach in there and bring it out, bring that side of them out. How do we do that? We encourage, we compliment, sometimes we call them out on, hey, cut out the self-destructive behavior. Why? Because you're hurting someone I love, you dumb son of a bitch, and that's you. And so writing is a way of doing that. It's like, wait a minute, what you just said in fourth grade pidgin English is something so profound, it would just rattle people to their core, and they would rise up in the armor of the righteous and go out and, I don't know, feed the poor or something. But the way you express it, it's going to be lost. So let me rephrase it for you. Let me make you a better you. And so as a writer slash editor, I get to do that. And that is just of immense satisfaction.
Sounds like that would be very gratifying to be able to work with people that way. Do you
Yeah.
find that you get more enjoyment out of the editing process than you do writing your own words, or how would you compare that?
Uh, Kind of apples and oranges. When I retired from Bechtel, and the company that you worked for and I worked for, I stuck it out for 32 years. You quitter. You did. I know. I
Made it
think
13.
I think you've done a great thing. You've launched into entrepreneurial pursuits, and I think that's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Um, yes, sometimes I think the thing that kept me in Bechtel for 32 years were not the best parts of my personality, but maybe the worst, the craven insecurity. And I mean, when you're raised in five different homes, and nobody will really take ownership for you. Who the hell is that? I don't know. The last name looks familiar. Well, I guess we got to feed him. Ah, shit. Anyway, you do have to deal with insecurity a little bit. Anyway, where was I? 32 years back. Yeah, when I retired. So I retired at 62, about 7 years ago, and 6.5, I guess. And my phone exploded. Now, I had been doing writing for people for the last 10 years. Okay, I did it on the side, but I probably ran. If a full time business is 100%, I was running about 30%. Okay, so most of my weekends were taken up when I worked as an engineer. Most of my weekends were taken up working on books. There were times during the workday because we were on a government project, and sorry to all the government employees out there, but there's sometimes it's just not a damn thing to do. But anyway, my phone would ring and I'd walk out to the parking lot and it's a guy in Germany and he wants me to produce an English book for him. I mean, there were times when I was running my business from the parking lot, and I finally said, "This isn't right. Either you're going to be a full-time writer, editor, publisher, or you're going to go back and be an engineer and try to give Uncle Sam pennies on the dollar for what he's paying for your services." So, but anyway, when I walked out of that engineering trailer for the last time, my phone exploded and my business went up by an order of magnitude. And so, for the next 4 or 5 years, Jacqueline and I were just balls to the wall. We were gone. And my policy was I'll never turn down a job. And I never had never had to advertise. It was just, hey, you did this book for so and so, and she said you did a lovely job. And sorry, I'm adjusting my mirror. And could you help me? Yeah, I said, well, send me what you got. Yeah. So most of the editing I did in those days was gratifying. Sometimes it felt like uh, shoveling the rancid manure out of a long neglected horse stall, And but the people were happy. What I tell people what I tell authors is to temper your enthusiasm. Um, some of these people come to me and they think as soon as they get a book listed on Amazon, which is completely easy to get a book listed on Amazon, as soon as they do, the world's going to beat a path to their door. And I say, well, no. As soon as you do, the world will never hear of you again, because Amazon is the path to what's the word? Ambiguity. Yeah, the anomaly. I don't know. There's a word. Yeah, go ask a writer. But anyway, they'll never hear of you unless you begin to promote it. Well, how do you promote it? You promote it with your personal and professional platforms. Okay, it's who you know, both in your personal life, but also in your professional life. So I work primarily in the area of theology. So it's for the theologians out there, the preachers, the teachers. I have one author who is a CEO of several nonprofits. I mean, she feeds the poor. She helps distressed women who have been abused. So that when I say ministry, I mean these are boots on the ground people. These aren't ivory tower. How many angels fit on the head of a pin people. These are real workers, and they're good people. Okay, they'd be good people if they were Christian. They'd be good people if they were Muslim. They'd be good. They are doing good things. Oh, by the way, let me tell you about the gospel of Jesus Christ. Okay, so I found that mostly very satisfying. But in the last year, for better or for worse, it could have been the biggest mistake I've ever made. I began to write my own stuff, and Vince, I love it. I began to write children's books. In fact, can I walk over and grab one? So more and more, I found myself rewriting a manuscript. So not just editing it and making it sound pretty or plausible or readable or credible, but actually saying, look, this scene would work so much better if, had a lady come to me, oh, probably 3, 4 years ago, Cindy, and she uh, had quite a story. She was grandmother age, uh, grandmother with vitality, not a little old lady with knitting needles screaming at the kids, get off of my lawn. Um, and she had lost a granddaughter. She was raising the granddaughter as her own because her daughter uh, was having problems. Okay, and the granddaughter was about 8, I think, and she got killed. She was in an accident caused by a habitual, a chronic drunk driver. All right, horrible story. And well, Cindy, she didn't take it well. She couldn't recover. She wasn't going through the normal stages of grief. So what I got from her was a series of journal entries. Okay, I had a manuscript that thick, and it was journal entry. Now, Cindy is a very detailed thinker. All right, so these were very tightly woven grains of thought and experience and expressions, and she expected to put a cover on it and send it out to the world, and everybody else in the world will go, yeehaw, now I know how to grieve. And I think, well, no, you don't. Okay. This is like
Wasn't
some,
organized in any way.
oh, not only organized, it hadn't, it hadn't, uh, it hadn't developed in here. Okay. It hadn't developed in her heart. She was putting a mask on it. Okay. Now, I'm not a therapist. I don't pretend to be one. I didn't even sleep in a Holiday Inn, but I looked at it and I said, okay, this is bad. So what I did is there were enough facts in the journal that I could put that together. So I wrote the first chapter, and I wrote it in a form. It's called creative nonfiction. Okay, anybody who knows anything about writing will be familiar with that term, because there's fiction, nonfiction, but then there's creative nonfiction. Creative nonfiction is when you tell a story about a real story about real things, things that actually happen, but you incorporate elements of fiction. Okay, so you'd use foreshadowing, you'd use dialogue, you would use maybe a more glowing narrative and things. And so I did that in her first chapter, taking her up to how the child died, and she was blown away. She loved it, and in a detached way, as an editor writer, I enjoyed the process of writing her story from what she gave me. We did the whole book together. And what's interesting as a side note is we finished the project about maybe 4 or 5 months, and I knew that she had completed the grieving process. The rewriting the book was a catharsis for her. Okay, and because it forced her to go back in her mind and say, okay, here's what happened, here's how, and then I could write it. So it was an incredibly rewarding experience. But so I began to write my own stuff. And this is one of them. I don't know. Does this show up backwards or frontwards?
It shows up frontwards to me, the real deal,
Okay.
the life, death, and
Yeah.
resurrection of Robert Claiborne Nash. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
I've read that. It's been a
You,
couple years since I read it, but I did read that a couple years
so
ago.
Clay Nash is kind of a rascal. He's a preacher, down south. He's over about 250 churches, and good man, does good things. But he wasn't always a good man who did. I would say he was a good man who did bad things. That's Jim Bryson's take on humanity. Everybody is good. Anybody who ever told Augustine that we were born with a faulty nature. Now, this is a little bit of Christian theology. Probably one or two of your listeners will get it, but there's a teaching in Christianity that says you're born with a fallen nature, you're born corrupt, you're born evil, and then I'm sorry, that's not only wrong, that is heinously damaging. All right, you're born good. We are good. People are good. They acquire the crap from the outside in, but people are fundamentally good, and so you got Robert Claiborne Nash, a fundamentally good renegade down south, Arkansas, brilliant mind, photographic memory, a mechanical savant, okay, and just as adept at drinking, carousing, fighting, and picking up women. And so he became a truck driver. He was running truck at 14. Okay, and anyway, the story behind the book is every time I got together with Clay, It was one story after another, and they would just, Jim, let me tell you about the time me and old Elmo were rolling down. Okay, Clay. And I'd listen, I'd remember them. I have a knack for remembering people's stories. I don't always remember appointments. You were supposed to be at the doctor at 4 o'clock. Oh, well, I'm sorry, but I remember the story of the doctor, Yeah. Anyway, and so one day I just said, Clay, we're gonna write your story. I'm gonna write your stories. I'm gonna write your biography. So the funny thing is I wrote it in first person as if I was Clay. So in essence, I ghost wrote his autobiography. But he said, Jim, put that book under your name. You don't have to put it under mine. He gave me the book, and so our deal is he distributes it everywhere he goes. So hundreds and probably thousands of people have read it. One guy read it in prison. His mom had given it to him, and he says, "You know what? If Clay Nash, that kind of guy, can straighten his life out, be straightened out by God, I know I can." So it's having that kind of impact. I've heard a couple of prisoner stories from it. Anyway, it's fantastic. Honestly, it is. And then I took a shot at my own theology called The Great Gamble. Wrote that strictly on well, you want to hear the story behind that?
Sure.
I can storytelling about storytelling. So I said that I've been working with Harold Eberle for, I don't know, 25 years. And um, one of the books I did for him, when I edit his books, I don't just change his grammar, his syntax, his sentence structure, even his paragraph structure. I challenge his theology. Now, he is a true theologian. I am not, but I'm a common sense thinker. And the idea is simply this: two guys sitting at a bar. I could be sitting at a church social having a sarsaparilla, but I would prefer a couple of beers. And one guy says, I believe in God. And the other guy says, I don't believe in God. I said, well, what have they just said to each other? And the answer is absolutely nothing. Why? Because I don't know what he means by God, and he doesn't know what I mean by God. See? And so if you explore the discussion a little further, conversation. So, well, what do you mean you don't believe? I don't believe in a God that kills little babies and lets animals suffer and brings all this evil on us. There is no God. And I say, yeah, okay. I don't believe in that God either. Let me tell you how I understand God, and my understanding based on experience. See, so and whole idea behind the Great Gamble is that until we can understand how we define God, how we see God, then it tells us how we relate to God. But more importantly, the way we relate to God, the way we relate to anybody, is need based. Okay. When you were an engineer and I was an engineer, and I'd come to you and say, "Oh, Vince, we got the sky is falling. We got to fix this." I was coming to you because I had a need, and I knew that you had a solution. So it's a very open theology, as the subtitle says, an empirical argument for the modern agnostic, which I think sounds cool as anything, but most people go, huh? So anyway, that. And then I
Yeah,
began to
I
have,
read that one.
yeah, it's pretty good. I do have a rewrite in mind because sometimes I get off into the weeds. And so then I began to write kids' books. And there's a little girl, uh, she's about 9 or 10. No, wait a minute. She's about 11 by now. She's probably 9 when I wrote this. But she lives around the corner. Her name is Lucy, and she has chickens, and she sells eggs, and we buy Lucy's eggs. And so I got to thinking, and I decided to write. She's a little CEO. Oh, hello, Mr. Jim. Will you be having some eggs today? Thank you, Mr. Jim. And it's genuine. It's like, Chick, you're going to be running General Motors here in about 10 years, But so I wrote, let's see, how's this coming across here?
Yeah, that
Lucy,
looks good.
Lucy the Lion-Hearted and the Chickens Who Sang Opera, right? And it's a fanciful story of Lucy and her giant chickens, and they indulge in opera, they indulge in literature. We're quoting Langston Hughes, we're quoting Shakespeare, we're quoting Emily Dickinson, but it's in a way that a kid can relate to it and have a ball with it. The whole, the motto of a kid's story is it comes from the Wizard of Oz when the Wicked Witch said to the Scarecrow, "Have a ball, Scarecrow," and then she threw him a flaming ball. And
Yeah,
so,
a
not
good
to
friend of
be.
mine has a daughter named Lucy, so I want to make sure to get them a copy of that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know what? When we're done, I'll pack some up. I'll send them to
I
you.
have it. I have it already. You sent it
Oh,
to
you
me.
have it. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I've been meaning to get.
What did you think of it? And
I
don't
liked it. That's the only. You sent me three children's books. That's the only one I've read so far. But I
okay.
did think that was good.
Okay. So then Lucy has a little sister named Sarah, and Sarah is a completely different personality. Okay, where Lucy's the little CEO, Sarah is the little kamikaze commando artist. Life's a beach kind of. She is wild and it's just so lovely wild. And so Sarah got her book, and it's let's see, it's Sarah the Star Catcher and the Sun Who Wouldn't Shine. Okay. And so Lucy's in it and the chickens are in it, but Sarah goes on an adventure, and again, it's a blast. It's a blast. And then finally, there's a little girl down in Tennessee named Selah Noble, and I know her mom, Angel. I met her a couple of years ago, and Selah likes the Lucy book. Selah likes the Sarah book. And she sent me the most adorable video. She says, "Hello, Mr. Jim. I've read the Sarah book. I mean the Lucy book, and I just got the Sarah book. Thank you. And I'm going to be reading that." In fact, Angel said that they were on their way out to dinner, and Selah insisted on bringing her Sarah book with her because it just showed up in the mail, and she was reading it to them while they were on their way to dinner. Okay, it just okay. You get a car at 16. All I gotta say. But there's a part in the Sarah book, spoiler alert, where one of the chickens throws up. Now you got to read the book. Don't let that color you. But think think rock and roll drummers. Okay. Anyway, so one of the chickens throws up, and Selah was very upset. She goes, "Oh, did he get the flu and then he threw up?" Because she didn't. She wasn't alive in the '60s. Okay, she doesn't remember what happened to Mama Cass and Jimi Hendrix and God knows who all. Okay, okay, that's her fault. Too bad. But I felt like a creep. So Selah got her own book, which was a little more normal, called The Great Warrior Salamite, and I nailed it. I heard back from her. I got a video of her dad reading. Uh, he read the whole thing, but the video I got was him reading the last page, and she was just over the moon. And I was like, yes, got it. And so, in fact, I'm going to be reading the Sailor book in a couple of weeks at a Lions Club meeting for kids. They get together. They do this once a month, and they get an author, and I get to read it to them. So, do I like editing or writing more? I am falling in love with writing more. I mean, I've always been a writer, but it's been a writer for other people. And in all candor, these days, sometimes the editing, I feel like it gets in the way of my writing. But I think I need to do both. For one thing, the writing keeps the lights on. I mean, I make a pretty good living as a writer editor. So, future books, I want to write about the nature of the heart of man. You know, who we really are on the inside, what we do about it. I've got more kids' books in mind. I enter the psyche of children with great eagerness but trepidation. Children believe anything you tell them if you're credible. And you know what it takes to be credible? All you got to do is be nice. You know what I mean? It's not that hard. Check your bullshit at the door and sit down, and it's just human to human, big human to little human. And that's what I love about it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So one of the main questions I'm trying to explore with this podcast is to try to understand what people are investing their energy into with hopes of a better future. So how would you say that you would answer that question? What are you investing most of your energy into now with hopes that you have a better future?
I mean, like a better future for mankind.
Better future for yourself, your family, your kids, not mankind, no, just,
Okay, mankind. That's a little too ambitious. Well, we'll do
yeah,
mankind now, and then I'll get with Elon Musk, and we'll see where
there
the
you go.
are. Um, well, I'll tell you one thing about old age, Vince, and I didn't know it till I got here. Okay, I'll be 69 in a couple of weeks. The thing about old age is what you thought were your goals and your ambitions are not really what your goals and ambitions are. Now, what do I mean by
Interesting.
that? I'll put it this way. I have a friend. She's down in Gate City, Virginia. I've known her for 45 years. She's doesn't have a lot of money. She's had some tough turns in life. And long story short is she bought a shack. She had to move from where she was. And she bought a shack. It's a mess. And she's hiring locals to come work on it. Like she needs a new roof and she needs plumbing and she needs walls. And I mean, and if you know anything about trying to hire laborers anyway, it's like, yeah, I'll be here Monday, but they fail to tell you which month Monday, or and then being a female and she's dealing with anyway. She had a tough time. And what I said to her to encourage her, I said, Judy, let me tell you something. Where is it? I said, Alice, I said, we don't realize that all our building, all our striving is for one thing, not the building before us, but the building within us. You are building something great, something enduring, and it will go on with you when you finally move on. A building built without hands, a structure eternal, a monument purified by flames. You think you are building a house, and you are, but in fact, you are the house. Okay. And what I realize, I'll quote another poem, this one by heart, and then I'll land the plane for you. It says, I think over again my great adventures, my fears, the small ones that seem so large, for all the vital things I had to get and reach. And yet there is only one thing, the only thing, to live to see the great day that dawns and the light that fills the world. All right, now that's called Eskimo Song. What these things are saying is simply this, that what we think we're building, what we think we're charging, what we think we're achieving, what we think we're accomplishing, they're all usually worthy goals, of course, unless you're building the mafia or Taylor Swift singing one more version of Shake It Off. No, I like Taylor. I'm just picked on somebody. We think it's about the businesses or the songs or the books, but it's really not. Okay. People say you can't take it with you. Bullshit. We take a lot with us, but we don't appreciate what we take with us because what we take with us is inside. Okay. To build the house before us, we have to build the house within us. I learned to accept challenges. I learned to work with people. I learned to be patient, or I learned to be demanding. I learned to, I acquire all these skills to achieve the external goal, the external objective. But the enduring result is who I am who I am in my personality, my character, my experience. And that drives my sense of purpose. Like I have a log splitter out here. I live on 3.5 acres in Western Maryland. And yesterday I was happily splitting wood. Okay. It's not exactly about splitting wood. I love to split wood. I really enjoy it. But at the end of the day, it's done something within. All right. So my goals is to realize that, but to also engender it in others. Okay. When we realize that we have as much to learn from difficult times as we do, I say learn. Let me choose a better word. When we realize that we benefit as much or more from difficult times as we do from good times, then we're not going to shrink away from challenges, from obstacles, from things that in the moment appear too great for us to overcome. Because we're going to say, oh, yeah, I'm going for it. Do you know how you're going to do it? Not a clue. But I'm going to do it. Why? Because I want to. Because it's who I am. because I will not be able to face that man in the mirror until I take a running leap at that mountain and give it all I got. Well, why? It's a mountain. No, it's not a mountain. It's the mountain in here. That's what I've got to learn to overcome. So, how was that?
That was deep, and I'm gonna go back and listen to that again. I
Okay.
need to let that sink in, but I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Could I throw one thing in here?
Yeah.
And uh, as soon as I retired, I learned, I discovered YouTube for, uh, I know there's a lot of crap on YouTube, but you can mine YouTube and you can learn a lot of stuff.
This will
And
be on YouTube.
oh, good. Hi, YouTube. And I began to watch videos about near-death experiences and people who literally died. So I think near death there's probably a better term, but I mean, like they were dead for hours. You know what I mean? And what they experienced, and they came back. And these aren't necessarily Christian people. It wasn't like, oh, I saw the arms of Jesus, and then the book of Matthew was open to chapter 14. My life verse and all that. I mean, that happens sometimes, but for the most part, these people have a profound experience. But the takeaway for me is that the true essence of life, the enduring nature of life awaits us. Okay. So, the Apostle Paul said, oh, oh, grave, oh, death, where is thy sting? Oh, grave, where is thy victory? Okay. The idea of we come to the end of our life, whether it's brief or long, and well, good old Jim, he lived a happy life and managed to evade his ex-wives, and life is good, and good old Jim. No, what awaits us? The evidence is pretty strong that what awaits us is so much more than what we understand here. I just finished a book called Imagine Heaven, and this guy was a former engineer. He was a skeptic. He was a confirmed agnostic, and he began to investigate, first of all, the possibility that God is real. Eventually convinced himself that God is real, then started a church for skeptics, and then he began to study near-death experiences. And what he uncovered was earth-shaking. So when we go back to the idea of, what am I really accomplishing? What am I really driving and striving for? When you understand that an existence awaits us, then you know why it is vital that everything we do in life contributes to our integrity, that it does not tear us down on the inside, but build us up. What does heroin do? It destroys you for the price of an incredible high. What does pornography do? It destroys you for the sake of a momentary pleasure. What does vengeance do? It destroys you for the sake of that momentary quenching of a thirst. There are so many things we do that destroy. And what does giving do? What does kindness do? What does love do? What does sacrifice do? As Jordan Peterson says, no, the purpose of life is not to be happy. And I love his voice. He's like, nah, you do your job, you do your purpose. If life is crappy, you deal with the crap. And that's what we take with us. And knowing roughly the nature, the characteristic of where we're going ought to guide us. It ought to give us a direction in how we should live now. We should live now knowing we're going to eternity. That's not a if, and, or but. We are going to eternity. The question is, what are we taking to eternity? Okay. What are the enduring, eternal qualities that we take? That's should be our life goal.
Can't think of a better way to end the conversation than that.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much for your time today, Jim. I appreciate it, and it's nice talking to you. And maybe we can do it again sometime in the future.
I'd love to. I like you, Vince. Always have.
Appreciate it.
Take care, brother. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks.